A gap is filled in the Star Trek world as to why the Klingons made peace with the Federated. All is thanks to James T. Quirk, coming out of retirement once again to deal with the new weapon, the Death Wave, that threatens Starfleet and the entire cosmos. Attended by his yo-woman, Miss Rind, his doctor-psychiatrist, Macboy, and his first overseer, Mr. Spook, Jim must remain the center between emotion and logic, playing a game of four-dimensional chess as his last frontier. Any similarities to Star Trek, Star Treks, Star Trek, or Star Wars are purely coincidental. Scene script, Chapter 1, Starbabe 24. Jim Quirk walked the corridors of Starbabe 24. Jim Quirk, retired starboat captain. Starbabe 24 was a frontier outpost bordering Klingon territory and was the newest and most powerful base. It was now Jim's retirement home. The base had every convenience, recreational and tech-wise. Its halo floors were so large that you could almost believe you had your own planet, and that chrome and steel corridors never existed. Still, it wasn't enough somehow for James T. Quirk. Jim headed towards Miss Ryan's apartment. As he walked, he was still turning over schemes in his mind which could circumvent Starfleet's stuffy regulations, especially the one which had required him to retire from the captainship of the Enterprise at the relatively young age of 65. Rules were just simple guidelines, thought Jim. What really mattered was real-life common sense, not some archaic regulation. Yes, Jim knew the book well and often had to rule from it, but he had often ruled from his heart as well. Never mind that he was as healthy and as potent as ever. Never mind the fact that he was the first human captain to suffer such an indignity. Indeed, starboat captains seldom survived to a ripe old age, and so it was that the retirement rule had never really been tested. What really stung was the fact that the rule only applied to humans, and then only to starboat captains. Add to this the fact that it was the second time Jim had been retired. They might even make it stick this time. Jim rang Miss Rind's cabin bell, turning off his comophone as usual to suppress any sudden and startling interruptions that might come up during a time reserved for lovemaking. A 30-year love that had been waiting for its recent reconsummation. It was now a love which could be given and received freely. Retired for 2 months now, Jim felt relaxed and was doing some teaching on the base, though not really knowing what to do next. Without public comment, he had refused the Commodore 64 boat of this very Starbabe, but privately he knew that he could never take a desk job which entailed little more than noting arrivals and departures. Oh, surely there would be occasional bouts of excitement, but these would be few and far between, and anyway would often occur way out in deep space.
Miss Rind never looked better than she did during this last month. Sure, they each had a few wrinkles, but they had grown old together, and so they still saw each other in a rather ideal youthful light. Her once blonde hair was now a beautiful lithium silver, metallic yet soft. Her blue eyes were as deep as Jim's. They kept their eyes open as they kissed, so they could each look deeply into the other's reflection. The miracles of modern science and rejuvenation had given them a luster which enhanced the sparkle of youth that they both still felt. Jim still had a twinkle in his eye, and Miss Rind, she was just pure energy. Jim remembered some advice from Dr. Macboy about age. Jim, the day that you stop being playful is the day that you will begin to get old. These 2 months now seemed like years. Jim supposed that he could, in fact, was getting used to this arrangement, except that he couldn't help but notice the Enterprise out there in dry dock, undergoing a 6-month refit. Well, she certainly needed it after her last mission, during which she had become scarred from heavy Klingon phaser fire when Quirk had defeated the magnificent Commander Clank and his fleet. It never ends, thought Jim. Advance, then retreat. Old wars end, but new ones begin. New weapons are invented, then countered by even newer defenses. Technology grows by leaps and bounds. Of course, much of the new technology would make its way into the refurbished Enterprise. Only one thing seemed to remain as a universal constant: aliens' inhumanity to aliens, the trampling of inalienable rights across the galaxy. Jim's mind wandered. He thought of the activity around the base, the Yorktorn starboat ready to go, and the Excalibur now empty, her crew having been hastily transferred to the Star Empire, a dead knot. Well, whatever it foreboded, Jim Quirk was apparently not one of those who was in the know. As Jim was taken into the arms of Miss Rind, his worries vanished, replaced by love's wordless feelings which soothed him inside and out. He pulled Miss Rind ever closer. She was as a warm blanket in a cold age. Their eyes met, and their souls spoke in a language that was not yet understood by the multiversal exlator.
Dinner consisted of synthetic lobster, made from the genetic blueprint of an actual lobster that had lived long ago in the seas of Earth. It wasn't bad, but knowing that it was synthetic was somehow a detraction to its taste, although the synthetic formula was accurate. At least the wine was real, and so was Miss Rind. This was a rare moment of peaceful, romantic life, something Jim had not often known. As Jim proposed a toast, his cumophone started beeping. "James, I thought you shut that thing off." She preferred to call him James, not Jim, because James seemed a warmer and more romantic name. "It's the override signal. I can't turn it off." Belatedly, Jim rose from the table and stuffed his cumophone under some pillows in the bedroom, then returned and filled both of their glasses with a vintage wine from Antares 6, Scotty's present to him on his 65th birthday. "You'll improve with age," Scotty had said. After a while, Miss Rind remarked, "James, you've retained a lifetime rank of starboat captain, even into retirement, haven't you?" "I couldn't bear to give it up," said Jim, almost meekly. "I know," she reassured. "I know. Old captains never fade away. They hope and dream of circumstances which will return them to their primary love, their ships. However, that is also what I love about you. I wouldn't have you any other way, for then you wouldn't be you." And retired starboat captains need not answer a Code 3 signal. After all, suspected invasions have become routine in this quadrangle. They're just keeping me informed for once. But that life is over now. Jim dipped his lobster in butter, then savored it, not saying much, for all was so much brave talk by Jim. Miss Rin knew that James was now the lobster who longed only to be thrown back into that starry sea that was his real home. Only this time she wouldn't be left behind, for she had grown over the years and had learned to go after what she wanted.
"Well, James, some women expect diamonds but only receive rust. Although I'm content with this moment, I wouldn't mind if we had more." "That we shall have, Miss Rind. We have the rest of our lives now." The rust was a reference to the music that was playing. A 200-year-old song from the 1960s by Joan Baez, a song which somehow seemed to strangely echo Jim's present state of existence. As they ate in silence, words from the song wafted ever so softly about and all around them, weaving in and out of their hearts and minds as they silently interpreted it in their own way. "Well, I'll be damned, here comes your ghost again. But that's not unusual, it's just that the moon is full and you happen to call." Jim shifted a bit uncomfortably, not knowing why, for he was truly in love with Miss Rind and fully intended to stay with her. And here I sit, hearing a voice I'd known a couple of light years ago, heading for a fall. Miss Rind seemed willing to just live for the moment if she couldn't have forever. "As I remember, your eyes were bluer than robin's eggs. My poetry was lousy," you said. "Where are you calling from? A port in Orion's belt?" Jim thought of all the intersolar calls he had made to her, the many promises, the many meeting arrangements which had to be canceled due to the needs of Starfleet commandment. "Now I see you standing with brown leaves blowing around and snow in your hair." True, Jim was aging, and 65 might have been almost old, way back in the 1960s, but now, when the average human lifespan was 110, why, this was only middle age. There were many good years left. Now you're telling me you're not nostalgic, then give me another word for it. You were so good with words and keeping things vague. How often had he won his way with words, thought Jim. Well, it was one of his better talents. "'Cause I need some of the vagueness now, it's all come back too clearly. Yes, I love you dearly, and if you're offering me diamonds and rust, I've already paid."
Words were not required after dinner, and so there was no report made in the captain's log to guide me as to what happened during the rest of the evening between Jim and Miss Rind. We can only imagine that it was wonderful. However, I do have some bits and pieces from Dr. McBoy's log, for he still looked after the captain medically and also as his friend. Sometime that evening, space moved for Jim and Miss Rind, and for everyone else on the base as well, when the Star Empire and the Yorktorn left the base rather quickly and went into weft much too close to the recommended limit. "What is that rumble, James?" Miss Rind whispered in Jim's ear. "It's just some new hotshot captains turning on their afterburners too soon. Please turn mine on as well. I see that you are as ready as ever." It was some time later that Dr. McBoy rang Miss Rhine's door looking for Jim. Ignoring the bell at first, as he had done earlier with his beeping commophone, Jim finally wrapped himself in a towel and answered the door. "Boons, not now. If I wanted to be found, I would have sent out an advertisement or a communique all over the Star, babe. They're all dead, Jim."
Who are all dead, Boons? As senior base physician, I am immediately notified of all deaths. Who, Boons, who? Boons took a seat. The crews of the Star Empire and the Yorktorn are dead. Signals from their jettisoned space recorder just arrived. This was data recorded when the recorder kept running after it was ejected, and before the recorder itself was destroyed by whatever destroyed the ships. Miss Rind now appeared. She was holding Jim's commophone. It was beeping a code 0 signal, the cosmic emergency code. At once, Mr. Spook arrived and entered through the still open door. "Rigel is gone, Captain." "Which planet, Mr. Spook? It's not like you to be so imprecise." "I am being precise, Captain. Rigel, the star itself, is gone." "Gone! It is simply not there." "But the planets, without their sun to guide them, the planets and their people will die." "Not a supernova? No, there is only blackness. Rigel no longer exists. Disappeared." Jim rushed to the window, for they were only 2 light days from Rigel. It was true. The beautiful blue sapphire adorning Orion was gone. This was the greatest of crimes, if that's what it was. It was as if a part of Jim himself had been destroyed. Jim sat down, half shocked, yet, Captain again. He thought out loud. A star's light was the very elixir of all being. Without its star, the planets Rigel 1, 5 would sail off into space, millions would die. And the stars? Why, they were what one could rely on, a means to steer one's ship, reassuring beacons in the darkness, unquenchable by other than natural causes, the sources of all matter and life. "They call it the death wave, Captain," offered Chekhov, who had just arrived on the scene. Quirk was almost annoyed now. "Why does everyone seem to know about this thing but me? And why does everyone seem to know where to find me?" Miss Rind answered the question that no one else would. "Love is the most precious feeling that we can have. It's the most pleasurable feeling in the cosmos. It consumes mind, heart, soul, and senses. As such, it's hard to hide or to keep secret. The truth of love speaks for itself and is therefore beautiful in and of itself." "And so it is," confirmed Jim for all to know, even though they all already knew it. Jim dressed hurriedly, then quickly said, "Goodbye, Miss Rind." "Goodbye, James," she said, then softly to herself, "See you soon."
In a rage, Jim stormed into the base commander's office. "How long has all this been going on?" demanded Jim. "Settle down, Jim. All will be explained." "How long?" 3 months. "And no one saw fit to inform me?" "You and others didn't have a need to know. It might have panicked the whole galaxy, if word had gotten out." "Well, Commandant, one of our stars is missing, and the fleet's most powerful dreadnought has just been destroyed. The word is certainly out. We are calling it the death wave, Jim. It seems to be able to cancel energy sources somehow, reducing them to, well, nothing. The obliteration is so complete that little trace is left. However, we just don't have enough information on it to counteract it, and very little time left to do anything about it. Is it a new weapon? Most likely, although it could be a space effect. However, in every instance, the Klingons have been sighted nearby and have claimed responsibility. A priority communication arrived on the Commodore 64's terminal. This clinches it, Jim. 12 federated solar systems have just surrendered to the Klingons for fear of having their star extinguished. Spook arrived. "Captain, data indicates that the Yorktorn did not survive a second hit on its shells. That's all we have on long-range scan." "No sensor recordings? Nothing?" "Commodore 64, what about their space recorder?" "Nothing. We merely picked up a few radio signals sent from her space recorder while it was in transit before it was destroyed also. For space recorders dump all data when they sense their own imminent destruction." "You mean the death wave destroyed everything?" "Jim," answered the Commodore 64, "we have not yet ascertained its workings or its nature, only that it was directed at starboats, planets, and suns, and that there is apparently no defense against it, and none possible until we find out more about it. That's the main problem, really, getting near it." Jim looked at the Commodore 64. "And you want me to get close enough to it to learn more about it without getting blown up? What is its speed? What is the range of the effect? Perhaps I'll even take its picture."
That, Captain Quirk, is exactly what we are asking you to do. The mission is voluntary, of course, since you are not expected to return from it. This directive comes from the President of the Federated himself. In fact, For the duration of this mission, you will report directly to him in a command position equivalent to the rank of Quadrangle Fleet Admiral Commander. And should communication prove impossible for any reason, you are hereby given the authority of a freed agent of the Federated. Congratulations, Jim, you've just been elected God. And it looks like I'm up against the devil himself, Bones. Captain, I am directed to ask if you have any additional terms, as I am now your subordinate if you accept the job. I must have the Enterprise. Impossible, Jim, she's not ready. I just talked to Scotty over there. However, the starboat Excalibur is at your disposal, and your entire bridge crew is available to join you, with the exception of Scotty, who refuses to leave the Enterprise and insists on supervising her refitting. Then so it shall be, responded Quirk, with a godlike twinkle in his eye. Spook, your opinion. No choice, Captain. Either we die here, or we die out there in space, before which time we can possibly learn something to prevent the latter. Or we could simply surrender and join the Klingon Empire, Mr. Spook. Death would be preferable, Captain. Oh, well, Commodore 64, smiled Jim. I cannot take the mission because I'm over 65. Rules are rules, you know. This has been anticipated. The President has abolished the rule. In that case, I accept the mission. Chapter 7, the quest begins. The Excalibur left Starbabe 24 containing only the bridge crew and a substitute engineer for Scotty. Quirk chose to operate from the auxiliary control room since it was better protected, and perhaps for other reasons which remained unnoted in the captain's log. Are we going to wait around for them to find us? I can't take waiting. Why don't we just deliver ourselves to the Klingons? Boons, I also hate waiting. By your command, Boons. Mr. Salutu, set a course into the Klingon Empire, Weft Factor 6. Maybe we can surprise them. Set, Captain, but I have the authority, salute you. As you well know, execute maneuver. Done, Captain. Scene script. Jim, what edge do we have that the Yorktorn didn't? Well, Boons, they had no idea of what they were up against. At least we know of the effect's magnitude and that starboats cannot survive more than one hit. Sure, Jim, we know it's hopeless to stand and fight against it. Dr. McBoy, our primary mission now is to gather sensor data and send it back intact to Starfleet for defense analysis. As such, this vessel and its crew are expendable in that effort.